Now it shuts anyway.
We tell them to shut it.
You can push it.
Just stand there and hold it for
Yeah.
the meeting, will you?
No, I was taught you have to slowly, there we
Even.
go. Yeah, you can go out this way, so I don't have my key.
We're ready. Mayor, we're ready.
I've already.
Okay. Whenever you're ready.
Are we recording? Okay. Welcome everybody to our work meeting this evening. I understand Sherry's on her at water board will come later. I think Jared's coming, but we got a quorum so far, so we'll get going. Be a quick meeting tonight. We'll start with item 1.1, review of this evening's agenda. Nathan, you wanna?
There's maybe two items for you to consider tonight. One, we're not gonna request a resolution on, Utah 111, but you may wanna retain it on there just to be able to do like a formal vote if you wanna give us some formal direction. Afterwards, we'll talk a little bit about that. The other thing we talked about, if we finish that work meeting quickly, could we move the executive or the closed session to,
Right after
Yeah.
that.
so that may be something you wanna consider, give yourself that option.
Okay.
It's optimism, it's good.
Okay. Any other comments about the agenda?
You will have King Brown here for his recognition.
Okay.
There's a short video clip that communications put together for that, so.
Love it. Okay. Okay. Any future agenda items to bring up now?
I know we talked, I'm trying to remember what that item was, do you remember?
Which one?
Yeah, there's several items.
That was like
that
10:30 last night.
Yeah. I'll bring it up next time, if I remember.
It wasn't anything
You
super.
can
It
always,
wasn't.
you can always shoot an email off,
Right.
Yeah, I was driving.
but when you think about it, you don't have to wait till next week.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, okay, I see.
Just send me an email or
Well,
text.
I'll review our conversation from last night.
Okay. Steve, anything? Oh, I know what it was.
Oh, no, it's the agendas, okay,
Yes.
so, yeah. I'm done. So Midville City, had some interesting stuff happen last night, but I did love their agenda layout, how they had, council member reports listed. District 1 through 5 or 4, yes, but if, instead of, keeping the mayor guessing on who's gonna speak next on reporting, their committees or agendas from the reports. council
Simple change,
reports,
but we
yeah.
thought it'd make it.
So they just listed.
They just
it.
list council member, yeah.
Yeah.
So
That
simple,
way
yeah.
it's, you can probably do it start left or right, it's simple, but Teddy liked the idea.
Yeah.
We keep just changing it on you, Jackie.
As long as she's smiling, we're okay.
Jeez. Well, I don't, it's some sort of smile.
She's smiling on the outside.
Okay, that's what it was. Okay. Council discussion of future citizen recognitions. Can apply somewhere, I don't have anything else right now.
I have, so Harriman High School and Mountain Ridge High School both had huge DECA showings back in Chicago over the summer. Lots of national championships. I'd like to reach out to their advisor and see if they have a couple of those people that would like to come. It could be, in September.
See if they're backlog, might be seniors and with that.
Yep.
See if there's any coming back. Okay. Okay. Okay, we're going on 2.1. Blackbridge Reservoir operations and parking permit.
Now we know why Councilman Henderson's not here, because he saw this on the agenda. This is his favorite topic of discussion. So there are a few things we wanted to bring up today. HPD and Justin and Parks and I have been meeting about some of the issues that we've seen at Blackbridge Reservoir that have come back. The past few years, we've had to close due to algal blooms and COVID. We had some restrictions surrounding COVID. And now the popularity is coming back. And what we're seeing, and maybe Cody can talk to this a little bit, is people are not very nice to our staff up there. And so we're trying to find a way. They're parking all over the place, even parking on medians in the parking lot, and then refusing to move their cars or their OHVs. We've got parking.
Really?
Yes. We have parking issues in the neighborhoods. Again, even though there is a permit program, they are enforcing more, so Cody's gonna talk about that a little bit. And then we have some areas of the parking permit program that are excluded from the parking permit program that have asked to maybe be included, and we've had some streets that don't wanna be included that are currently included. So this is just gonna be a really fun discussion about our operations at Blackbridge Reservoir. Do you wanna talk about the increases you all have seen just because of, we have community services now?
So, and obviously, like Wendy said, these issues are not new. We did kind of get a break for a couple of years during COVID when we had some more restricted operations and we controlled the number of visitors to the facility through some of those other proactive means that helped. We're kind of back to the pre-COVID, pre-2017 type problems that we were seeing before that actually resulted in the creation of the parking permit program. Parking violations obviously have increased significantly, both called in to us and self-initiated. Our community services officers have been up there pretty much every weekend since the beginning of the summer and conducted proactive parking enforcement. In addition, we've received numerous complaints from the neighborhood about vehicles that are parked. Visitors that essentially will picnic, for lack of a better word, right on the park strip in front of someone's house, and pull out coolers and lawn chairs and change their kids' diapers and all kinds of fun stuff. So those are the same types of issues that we saw before that like I said, resulted in the parking permit program. And now that we're back to the reservoir being a very popular venue for recreation, particularly because of its no-cost option, we're starting to see some of those same problems creep up and complaints from the neighborhood again. We have about 135, 140 calls up there since Memorial Day in the neighborhood. A lot of them are parking related, but obviously some other issues that we're dealing with as well.
So a couple of options that we've brought before that council didn't really have the appetite for in the other times we brought them forward. One was just saying no more swimming, no more water access at the reservoir. That's a big draw. Justin and his team have done a wonderful job at controlling algae and swimmer's itch. So it's even more appealing to some people than it has been in the past. What was the cost that we spent on
So we're upwards of,
pesticide
we're up about 32,000 a year, something like that.
to treat the water?
Yeah, so the council kind of gave us a limit of how much they wanted us to inject, and so we've been injecting that amount, and as our demands have increased, we have to inject more as we use more water, but we're staying about that level to just keep it, algae away and then help control the snails that are in there, which cause the swimmer's itch.
So we could completely close access to the water, close access to water for swimming, but allow board sports, sort of like they do at Oker Lake and Daybreak, where they have the paddle boards and the kayaks and those kind of things. There's a whole list there's any number of things we could do. Could also do a parking permit program at Blackbridge itself, where residents can purchase a permit, or residents just get a permit and they're allowed to park there and other people aren't. What else did we talk about? Adjust hours, close on holidays. Holidays are our busiest days up there. So we see the most people and have the most problems and the least amount of staff to handle those problems. So those are kind of the operational things. We've had a really hard time staffing this year just because we all know what's going on in the economy. It's hard to find people at that rate. It's not a fun job. You're pretty much running garbage and telling people not to do things all day, which is not always exciting for teenage kids to do. So there's any number of solutions for Blackbridge. I don't know if you wanna throw out some ideas or give us some inclination to how you're entire look. I mean, we've talked about gates, we've talked about putting a pay station in, we've talked about all of those. All of those options, and those haven't, council hasn't been interested in any of those options, so we're just trying to figure out kind of with this new body, how you see the operations at Blackbridge and how you want staff to proceed. And then
Jared,
we
you
can
wanna
bring
go
you
first?
back. You know what, he
Figure I could be a little bit late to this part.
You didn't wanna talk about Blackbridge.
So once we have an idea of kind of what you're thinking, we can go back and discuss and bring back some cost options and.
So the biggest issue, parking. Is that the
Yeah,
biggest issue?
that
It's almost overuse is the challenge, is that you have so many people, there's not enough parking, and then then they get frustrated, so they start parking in areas they're not supposed to or on their lawn. Puts a lot of pressure on the staff who are there.
I think the parking is more a symptom of the overuse as opposed to the primary issue.
How do we limit use?
So when we were in COVID, we limited it to the parking lot. And we had somebody standing at the entrance of the reservoir telling people they had to turn around and come back later, that it was closed, there was no more parking. And that really worked well if we can find staff to do that job.
Pay for it.
Can we charge for parking?
Can you charge, I mean, that's what they do, that's
Well,
Springville,
gate, right?
that Springville,
Yeah,
similar thing charges
they charge.
for
I think,
non-residents.
For non-residents, the residents can come get a permit, but non-residents pay a fee. And I believe it's $15 a day.
Do we have any idea how many, what's the ratio of residents to non-residents?
Yeah, I was gonna say,
When we did the survey last year, it was about 60-40.
60-40. It's
60-40
probably, that's probably
residents.
consistent with our citations too.
It's tough
So you
when we're
think,
setting
so
our
you think the
rules.
residents
That's funny.
know the rules?
For the most part, and our residents tend to get the jump on it. Obviously, they're closer, so on a holiday, they'll be the first ones up there usually, so they get into the park and can find a place to park.
So if we charge, we may just be charging, I mean, we're probably not gonna get anything anyways, and those that don't park in there to pay will probably still park outside
Illegally.
illegally. So that may not be a solution.
The struggle is there's no way for us to balance, right? So, and that's why the permit program came about, was we would have residents who, you know, host a barbecue or a family party and their family would show up and park on the street, they would get cited too, because they don't have permits, so. It's
And
kind
they're
of
just
the
at the
same
residence, they're not the.
Yeah, and we have a program now where if somebody's doing that, they call,
issue. Right.
and then we'll issue them temporary one-day permits for, was
That's
a
a lot of
baby
work.
shower the other day.
Yeah.
Approved.
if it's, I know it's probably hard to quantify this, what is the estimated impact of closing it to swimming?
When we had it closed for swimmer's itch and algae, it completely alleviated the problem. There was very few people there, just the trail users
Just the
primarily,
trail users.
cause that's a trailhead for us as well.
I mean, could you still have kayaks or paddle boards or something if there's a no swimming rule?
I mean, they do it at Ochre Lake, right?
Right.
In Dayton.
We have, one of the challenges is we've created like a beach there, so it's just a little different than,
There's beach areas at Ochre Lake.
Yeah, there is.
sit
And
on the beach.
Like,
that's where I got the idea from, is when it first opened, they allowed someone that had all the same issues and everything. We used to take the kids as toddlers to that little beach area. And just said no swimming. You could still go to the beach, you could still wade in the park by the beach, just no swimming.
Would we still have to treat the algae if for paddle
Well,
sports?
so the chemical does multiple things. It treats the algae, but it also helps with mollusks and snails. And since we've been injecting it, we're not seeing the issues that other secondary irrigation users are with snails. So it has benefits outside of just the algae.
Outside of even the reservoirs. Problem is you take something back, that's the problem, once you kind of started it, that's what's, it's gonna be a lot of pushback if we pull back. Whose district is it? You always wanna own your district, own it.
Oh, man. But, I mean, yes, it's in my district, but that's a city amenity, right? It's a, the problem is that the parking impacts directly impact, you know, my neighbors there, and I know that's the part that's really hard. any overflow problems spill out into the neighborhoods, and that's where I'd like to find a way to stop that from happening.
Is that the updated map there?
And the only way I can see that happening
I think it's
is
in
I thought it
Sherry's.
was in Sherry's
either
district.
Is it?
limiting access, so
Did
once the parking lot's full, it's full.
Move to
Or
Sherry's, yeah.
taking away some of the activities so it naturally declines the popularity of it. But either way, I don't like the idea of people parking and then being argumentative with enforcement people. That's a bad
Are they
recipe.
compliant or no?
They're compliant with my staff, it's the park staff that they're argumentative with, right? These poor
The
teenagers who are up there telling them they can't park in a fire lane or park their ATVs on the sidewalk and,
And it's our contracted security as well.
right?
We contract with security, they're cheaper than these guys, but they also can't enforce like these guys, right?
Yeah.
So we just call them when we have a problem.
Everything's gotta cost money, that's the problem. Just enforcement of just board-only sports will be cost money. I mean, that's gonna be a great issue.
So yeah, it's a staffing issue.
This is a beautiful idea,
I
right?
know. See,
Yeah,
some
it
of
was
those
a
beautiful
beautiful
ideas. Turn.
How long
It is a
is-
fantastic amenity and it is great to have. It's a great option for people to recreate.
We've made it too popular.
If you,
Yeah.
It's in the wrong.
Probably wouldn't be
place.
popular, but if
Place.
you charged for parking everybody, right, you have to pay for a day use fee to use it, would that cut back?
Even if it's $5, people, is that gonna cover?
I think they're just more likely to try and find a place on the street.
That's my
Yeah.
concern too.
Walk
And then
outside.
they'll walk in, yeah.
And you sell
Might push it out.
Do you have that map? One of the other issues that we're seeing is, again, us trying to do good things, no, it's not on this map. Pulley Lane, which is south of Blackbridge, above Lookout Ridge. People are starting to park on that street, which is a public street, not a private street, and walk down a path that has been built by our Charles
Oh, it's up
department.
there. It's over there.
Right below Secret Canyon.
Mm.
And they're not part of the parking permit program, and we'll get to the parking permit program in a minute, but, I mean, they're finding their ways, right? They could go park just outside of the parking permit program on, what is that, Evening View, or Evening Shade,
Evening side.
Evening Side, and walk up.
And they're moving all the way over the street.
It's not
Then
that far,
walking
I
up
mean,
through that.
I walk
Yeah,
up
but I
there
forget
all
Take
the
that
time.
trail.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're adventurous, you can park on Emmeline and walk up the huge hill, you know?
Oh, man. People do it.
Right, there's one person.
And
that
Emily
goes
walk
up,
up there.
dump their stuff.
A
in
lot of
the
mornings,
vehicle, One guy
but-
parks and wants
I'm a dog, so I'm
Yeah.
not carrying anything, you know, a cooler and all that stuff, that's hell of a climb.
We also, engineering did a study on expanding the parking. You probably don't know anything about it, Bryce. I think we could add around 35 parking stalls. And the cost at that time, I wanna say was right around $70,000. I don't know what it would be now. We can look at adding more parking.
How many years ago was that?
Probably 5 years ago.
Yeah.
So
Probably
it's 700,000 now.
Yeah. Move the decimal, right.
I think there has to be a certain acceptance that if we're gonna have the amenity and allow utilization of it, there are going to be some challenges in operation. The question is, what can we do to best mitigate those challenges, not only to be effective, but economically feasible, right? We don't wanna be spending a gazillion dollars or raising the amount of money we have to spend here to make it less
$1 million.
you know, that kind of thing, so, I would be open to hearing a proposal on what it might cost to add a little more parking, that might alleviate a little bit of a problem. But at the same time, then I think you could charge a parking fee. So there's more parking, but it costs to go.
For everyone.
Maybe there's a discount for residents. I'm open to a proposal there, but.
Yeah, I don't hate that idea, I just wonder if more parking is gonna compound the issue of use more, right?
If overuse is our issue,
Well, I would say, like, you could take 35 incidents of people parking on streets and put them in that parking lot. That's better.
I'm just thinking on, I have not been up there this year, but my wife was when that incident happened, and it was crowded, right? And you couldn't hear or see from one side of the lake to the other on that beach. And I don't know the response or who was there first, but it was a lot of people there.
That's another thing we've discussed before. Is people treat it like it's a swimming pool. It's an open body of water. The risks, what the risks are.
Is there any appetite to just go to board sports to cut out swimming?
Yeah, I think you're gonna get
We'll get pushback.
pushback on what the definition of swimming is. Right?
Yeah.
If kids are flopping around in the water, playing on the beach, building a sandcastle, I don't know, that's the same as a whole bunch of people coming up to go neck deep swimming out in the water.
Then you're gonna have a 16-year-old again having to enforce it.
Yeah, and it's up to their judgment and perspective. I did watch an awesome documentary about shade balls on water in LA, and
I saw that too, yeah.
so, but I don't think that's the solution, because we don't have that same issue, so. I don't know. I hate taking it away, but
I think we have to do something, it's a
Yeah.
hard thing.
I think it's gonna be drastic, whatever we do, we're gonna get kickback from either side. If we're enforcing parking more stringent, or if we're limiting swimming or access, I think it's gonna be a hard pill to swallow, either way.
Well, I mean, Harriman taxpayers paid to build it. Harriman taxpayers pay for the operation of it. Harriman taxpayers pay for the staff to man it. Maybe we just limit it to Harriman taxpayers. And don't make it you can cut 40% of the utilization off just by saying, you don't live in Harriman, you can't use it. Sorry, we're mean that way.
Sorry, devil's advocate, but then my nieces and nephews can't come with me, because they are not here.
Okay, well, maybe if you're a guest of, I don't know, if you're there with a resident,
Doesn't have an issue in the past too because Riverton pays for a part of
Yeah, it's Riverton's water as well, or something, yeah.
They just paid for the secondary water, it's not, they didn't pay for any of the amenities.
But they would push back though. Yeah,
That's it.
yeah, I heard that.
Yeah, we talked about that, we don't have any concerns
They
about
help
that.
pay for the original construction, but as far as the recreation and amenities,
Yeah.
they're not included in
Sometimes there's a challenge doing that, or you're gonna have to have somebody manning a gate there and looking at
IDs.
license or
License plate,
IDs
yeah.
and say, yep, you're a resident, you're not.
And just a reminder, this is a trailhead too.
Yeah, that's my concern. We don't wanna limit that.
So,
I'm here for the trail with my flip-flops and my floaty.
and no bike.
Maybe we do need to look at the expanding the parking charging. Maybe that's.
maybe that's the right way to do it.
There's some
I hate
great,
spending money like that, so we're just chasing.
Maybe there's a way to recuperate some of the costs through parking fees.
Don't mind the guy on the floor.
I mean, it's not a lot, but.
I'll come where I can see the screen.
okay, so we'll get some
And I don't
updated
think-
numbers
I was gonna
on
say, I don't-
parking.
We won't make any changes this year. I think we
This is for
anticipate
next
for next year, right?
So we'll bring back some numbers on expanded parking and then maybe some
We'll probably have to expand the parking.
parking.
area.
There's some really great apps out there now where you can just download an app and pay that way. I mean, people are getting more and more used to that at all the venues.
I wonder if we could do like the car wash gate though too, right? You have the little tag that you put on your vehicle and it beeps you in and beeps you out. I
Need more money.
Well, I know, but if we're doing the infrastructure up there, rather than paying a $15 hour kid for parking metering, right? And then the city issues the RFID tags,
Yeah, but if it's the trailhead, you'd have to get access to the trailhead.
or they could pay at time of service.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah. I don't know, I'm just thinking.
There are some apps, I think maybe it's the QR code or something you would download on your phone that would scan it.
Yeah,
You figure
like the
license
parking
plate in.
downtown or whatever, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, we'll bring back some of those. But it sounds like the last thing is to take this one, is what I'm hearing.
So maybe a limit.
I think I'd like to see if there's other things that could work first.
Okay.
And then if those things don't work, we'd probably have to restrict who uses it or the kind of use it is, you know?
Yeah, we gotta be surgical about it.
Yeah, and I think you can justify to the, residents and say, look, we've taken measures to try and make this less restrictive. But, I mean, the thought of some 16-year-old in a conflict with some,
40-year-old dad and
Yeah.
kids, yeah.
I mean, that just sounds like a bad recipe, and I'd prefer not to ever have that kind of thing going on.
Okay, the mayor was
fine.
approached about a concessionaire that is interested in renting out water equipment on the reservoir. Paddle boards, kayaks, those kinds of things. Previous councils have not been interested in that. You can't see Councilman Henderson because he's on the floor, but is that something,
I can hear him shaking his head.
is that something that this council would be willing to entertain?
A few of the issues that we faced is if you say yes to one, who do you say no to,
We would probably
And
issue
how?
an RFP
right? How,
look for a
why?
concessionaire.
They wanna rent out paddle boards, and like, we got inundated with it when somebody found out we were considering one, we got several.
But can you do an RFP?
You could do an RFP and have it a formal concession, right? You have the right to do this here and you pay this amount to the city.
Cause you can almost do the concession
We have a concession
Concession
stand
Yeah, they
out
have a facility there.
and then even that open space that she was asking about,
there, which might be parking.
which could go to parking. Oh, that's where it would be parking.
That was part of the expansion.
I mean, again, yeah, we're gonna have a lot of people approach us, but if we do an RFP and choose based on, is that a way to help fund better pay for, you get somebody? I don't know. Pay somebody more than 12 an hour.
I would say if you're generating some additional revenue, that could justify some of the additional expenses of, regulating it a little better. Whether that's through parking or concessions or something. I guess again, I don't want to necessarily be in the business of picking winners and losers without a formal process that we go through in evaluating that, but I would say that if we go through the right process and we pick somebody, and I don't know, maybe we do it, it's a 2-year contract or we don't let it go forever, but they can come in and operate a concession stand or operate as some type of a rental, something, I don't know. Yeah, I'd be open to hearing that.
Yeah, I don't like when people just singly approach. So,
Can I do this? Oh, sure. And then you have 50.
Okay. Anything else on concessionaires?
I think an RFP and then be open to it, I think, yeah.
Okay.
With a fee, I mean, there's a fee.
yeah, there's a
We'll
rental.
have to lease.
A rental
the
lease,
space.
yeah.
What does the RFP include, right? Trash removal and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, it'll have to be super detailed out.
Yeah.
So typically, having done concessions like this before, so that the concession isn't that they're selling food, it's the right to do some business there, just like the Forest Service does concessions. We would just wanna spell out specifically what their area is, what their responsibilities are. I mean, if they became really big, you could have them manage the parking. That creates its own piece, they're gonna want a piece of the fee, but there are some options you can do with concessions. I would suggest we start small.
Right.
And then see how that works. And I don't know if we have a adopted RFP process for concessions here.
That I've seen
I haven't
anyway,
seen.
so we can do that.
Put it out for call for proposal, let people tell you what they wanna do, and then you can decide if it's paddle boards. That
Snow cones.
group has the sole exclusive right to rent paddle boards there, and it's
Right.
usually a time limited agreement, right? They have X amount of time to do that. Any improvements, or if they bring something out that they gotta haul it off when they're done, they're responsible to keep it clean. If they're generating trash, they've gotta haul that off themselves. There's all those things you put, so you have the RFP and then you would have a concession agreement. More work for Todd, but you would have a concession agreement that spells all this out, so.
You have a boilerplate one, like we have a boilerplate NDAs.
We can find some. Then we'll modify.
I can get you an example of what not to do from past experience, so I'll be looking for those
Where you
things.
learn the most, what not to do. Okay,
And I think the point is not to pick favorites if there's a process.
alright, so let's talk about the parking permit program. The streets that you see in Blackbridge there are currently included in our parking permit program. As I mentioned, we've had a few calls, there was a resident on Woodsmere that thought it was too much, it went too far and they didn't want their street included anymore. We have a resident that lives right on the corner of Briar Park and Ashland Ridge that also has a salon in her home. She would like more parking permits for her salon. She has,
Right there, right?
clients that are coming in and out on a regular basis, and she's
Looks like-
interested.
We will say that
Awesome.
her conditional use, when it was issued by the city, very clearly said her clients were not allowed to park on the streets. They had to park, because she's running a business out of her home. Her conditional use from the city said
Didn't we just have an
she must-
ordinance about this?
She must operate, she has to park on, they have to park in her driveway. Her driveway is on this side and her front door is on this, cause it's a corner lot. She says it's a long ways for people to walk.
So she may be here tonight, she's, had a client that has gotten a ticket while being parked there. So she may be here for public comment tonight, I've invited her. But do you wanna make any change, and then like I said, you can't see Pulley Lane on here, but it's just the street up from Aurora Vista on the bottom of the map. Those lots on the very bottom, that's Pulley Lane. Like I said, they're having people park on their street and walking down.
If they're parking there, it sounds like we've got to do it.
Yeah, one of those, two of those lots, there's just an empty.
Yeah,
It's over.
it's a
yeah.
drainage. So I think we'd have to do a neighborhood meeting and see if that's a consensus of all of those people, if they wanna be included.
Okay.
If you're interested in that.
I'd be more interested in expanding it than shrinking it and looking at individual cases one by one and offering them extra permits or parking or what their needs are. I'd rather have a bigger, broader overlay personally to help the residents out and maybe a pain in the butt at the beginning, but
I mean, that seems like, you could argue Woodsmere's a little far. There's not likely to be a lot
On
of
that east
walking
side,
from
yeah.
there, you know. But again, I'd probably wanna hear input from several residents, how they feel about it, rather than just one.
yeah.
Okay.
Especially somebody running a business, cause they're having more traffic than most, yeah.
And same with the other street, right, the Pulley Lane, right, if there's a lot of support for it, okay.
And they have an HOA, so they'll be easy to get with.
They're private streets on that?
No, police not, police public. And then depending on how things go with Lookout Ridge, and that street,
Yeah.
we're, you know, we've had discussion about making that street public.
Bugle Ridge part, yeah.
Okay?
Okay.
I think that's all of our questions.
Very much, good. Good.
There's Blackbridge Reservoir.
That's good. I like that. Okay. Move on to item 2.2. Jared, just for your information, we've kind of changed how we're gonna approach this tonight. We're kind of looking, Bryce, maybe you can speak to what you're looking for. Nathan, I'll let you guys speak to it.
Yeah, so do we have the pictures? I don't wanna steal your thunder, but.
General priorities versus.
So, correct, so
That's
this is the area
very
where
smart.
we're talking about. There have been, UDOT has pulled together multiple, stakeholder meetings, mostly property owners, South Jordan, ourselves. And they've shown us just a bunch of different lines. So what we're hoping for tonight, and I'm gonna let Bryce kind of walk through, I think he's got some other pictures, he can just show you what they've been throwing out as. We're looking for some policy guidance that we can advocate. So if it's, for example, it's important to Harriman to keep a portion of that intersection of 126th in Harriman, great. It's our priority not to get saddled with the more expensive road because you decide to put the intersection in a big drainage that we then have to culvert, so. I think those are the things we're looking for. And then as opposed to saying exactly where the road should go, because there are so many interests, I don't think we even know. UDOT doesn't know what they're doing right now. And so that's probably some of you.
No, that's good intro. So yeah, we're just looking for some of those, like Nathan said, general priorities that we wanna see that we can advocate for in these UDOT stakeholder meetings. And this is a little bit of iteration, but we've seen so many alignments that it's almost hard to keep track of how many alignments we've seen from UDOT, from all the different parties involved. And so, John, it's going forward.
I don't think I powered it up, but sorry.
How do I turn it on? Oh, right here. Okay. So lately, this is what we've been saying, right? I ran out of colors on being able to easily see all the different alignments. And a lot of this discussion is because the alignments up here, this discussion is way outside of Harriman boundaries. So that's another thing, is that dictating an alignment up here is a little bit more difficult for us when it's not even close to our boundaries, right? So you can see some that come around these water tanks, some that cut in here around the water tanks this way. We included those just to kind of show that, hey, we can't cut through here. But then how we go from 118 down south, that's kind of where our questions have been, right? And the alignments we ran about 4 months ago before UDOT had any preliminary alignments out. We just wanted to see, okay, if we connect the road into 126 solely, what's the impacts? If we connect it into Olympia Main or the Olympia Road, what are the impacts? If we kind of go through and connect south to 7300 West, what are the impacts? And if you recall, for the most part, they generally move the traffic pretty close. It's a little bit of a challenge when you just connect to one road, right? So if we connected straight into 126 but didn't have anything that came up, you lose a little bit of connectivity down here as far as those getting up to that intersection. It would just require more roads to be built to connect up to there. If we connect down to 7300 West, like this red option, and not make more connections to the east here, you're just losing out on some connectivity. So that's where we got to that alternative 3 in our last discussion on saying, hey, this makes the most sense to balance out the traffic on 126, on 118, on Main Street was a little bit of this like orange option where we're tying into Main Street, but we're also tying 126 right into it as well. So we kind of just have a double distribution of east to west here. So that's kind of background to get to where we are now to say, we're not as concerned about picking a perfect alignment as we are to look at where do we want the connection points, what's most important to the city of Harriman at this point. And that's what we'll kind of advocate for with UDOT and our stakeholder meetings. So with that, I just kind of open it up to your guys' discussion on.
So Nathan, will you Nate, call out a few of those basic concepts?
Sure. What
Like water tanks and traffic flow, et cetera?
Yeah, so one thing that it's not doesn't show on here real well, but UDOT originally did not like this. This is a new one that just came back. It's some iteration. These have been all over the place. Originally, they didn't like this straight up and down because of a drainage right here that you have to go through an Army Corps process to change. And so they didn't want that, but they moved some things around and put all that onus on us on 126th. So we had talked that it probably needs to come down and then you could let the landowners, the private people who are gonna make money with commercial property or residential property, fill that in. Deal with that drainage instead of the city having to do all that at extra cost. But this is an area called Lark Meadows. This is a Doug Young property. So originally, South Jordan and Doug wanted this over here. Rio Tinto wants this road as far to the east or as they can get. That's their push. Recently, South Jordan and Lark Meadows agreed they would be okay splitting their property. These are also those sewer trenches. So UDOT originally was trying to avoid those. The funding from UDOT is from here to here. They don't have the money for this. So this would essentially double the length of the project. We originally were interested in keeping the major intersection, wherever it ends up being, at least a portion of it in Harriman, right? That's our commercial property. This one came out the other day. They showed the commercial would probably be right tucked in this corner. If this one comes through, this is 7300, which would connect through to 126. There'd be this intersection. U111 would essentially come here and stop. And then at some point, this becomes another state road. 126 does. It's in legislation that once it connects, 126 connects to U111, the state UDOT will say it doesn't require them to take it, but it says that they would consider taking it. So that's part of what we're looking at. What other pieces? So really, those are all this jumble of things going on. We're really looking, I think, to know the intersection again as a commercial piece. How do we fight for that? And then, what do we want to do with the 126th? How that all comes together. So I guess that's really what we're looking for, is your priorities in this.
Since I'm down here, I can't see anybody. I'll give you my priorities, or the ones you named, right? So one, the water tanks, right? We don't want to create an island there. So whatever that means for their alignment on that end, like to Bryce's point, right? We can't really affect on the north, but that does affect us with our property there. The 126 connecting it, and the drainage is a huge issue. We talked about that, the engineering of that, and the cost that would be for the city. That doesn't make sense for us to run the bear of that. So totally agree there. The location of the intersection is important to us for obvious reasons, and then as Bryce called out with that last, I don't want to call it a spaghetti bowl there, but we need connectivity direct connectivity with 126 for that traffic flow. We need connectivity with 7300 to get all of residents from Steve's area out of the city. Think machine gun fire.
Yep.
And then the connectivity with all of the local roads from there. So we need that traffic flow with the connectivity 126, 7300, and then we need the connectivity of the local streets there. So to me, those are my four that.
Yeah, for what it's worth, Jared, I would agree with you 100%. I think that's absolutely where our priorities need to be. I think if I recall, I think it was the option 2. If I remember right.
These are different.
These are
Yeah,
brand
these
new.
are all
Yeah,
different
these are all
than
different.
the ones we showed you.
I'm trying to interpolate which one were closer to what we were talking about before.
Two somewhat closer, although it had some other roads running up into 118th directly. It's and this it's appreciated. It says new U111 option 1 new because they've had options 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then they showed us A, B, C, D, E options,
No,
and
it's
now
new
we're back
1,
to
2, 3.
new. So I don't know what the next meeting will be. If anybody wants to
Alternate.
make some,
Roman numerals.
yeah.
That's why if we can
Yes.
tell them these are our priorities, and then they can draw the lines, and if those are included in it, then.
I would say that we probably want to avoid that drainage ditch. That makes sense.
Yep.
And if they want to bring that farther down into the Olympia Hills area to avoid that, I think that's doable. But without connectivity to all of those roads, I don't see that any solution is really good for this area. They've got to increase connectivity. There's just no way in or out. So
When we need, to me, there's two kinds of connectivity, right? one for traffic flow with the major roads
Right.
and one with the local roads.
One for the local roads, I agree.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, that's a good move.
It's a
Right,
little easier.
because
Strong word, John,
one of their
strong word.
pushes was, and I apologize for putting it this way, but it's the best like analogy I can come up with is that this is not the Nile Delta of traffic for U-111. The cars aren't just gonna dissipate into the pavement at the end, right, into the neighborhood roads like it sounds like there's at least one party pushing for that. We need that. We need to get people in and out, but then also have that connectivity for people.
Yeah.
Will.
And really, even on this, I mean, I know we're not picking the intersection, but on this one, the purple, I like the purple.
This
one,
one
actually, I
too,
think that
yeah.
brings,
I would
option
agree,
two.
that solves
Brings
a
you
lot
out
of
of the
problems.
ditch.
Bringing everybody out of 7,300.
Yeah.
I think you're gonna be pushing a lot of traffic down 126, which I like.
You know,
We're trying to push people down 126, that's where we're putting our big commercial.
So we
and I'm
have
guessing
capacity.
that either option 2 or option 3 probably cost less than the other options too, right? It's the shorter roads, there's not as
So,
much drainage ditches to worry about, you don't have to bring the
The-
Army
the
Corps in, you don't have to.
challenge with all of them is actually what's happening above this. The connectivity from 118th to 126th is what the state's funded, and frankly, the diagrams that were shown to them were Olympia Hills, right? Which this came down like, this comes down like this.
Yeah.
And this one they're doing, so we should say if this one were to be the choice, I think one of our pitches to Rio Tinto is that this should annex into Harriman. It makes no sense to have this road come here
Right.
and have this weird corner. But that's kind of a different conversation, I think we should, and we are
Yeah,
attempting to have
south
those with
of 126 and maybe east of U-111, that seems like a pretty good target area for
That's
us,
a great
right?
point,
Yeah.
Nathan. I think that's why if we have these major points, right, to bring them,
Well, I
rather
think-
than a preferred map, cause then just like, I'll put my hand up, just like I got fixated on the maps and the colors a few weeks ago, right? It needs to be more about the primary objectives.
So what I'm hearing is the intersection, I saw Bryce
Although
writing,
when they
I
do
was
it,
talking,
finally it needs
sorry.
to be purple.
Yeah, so this is what I have so far, so.
Let's just restate it to
feel
make sure
free
we're.
to- Yeah, so I
No
have,
red, no blue, but this has to be.
let's not create an island with the alignment up top and then connect to 126 and to the major roads and local roads to allow not only major roads to connect through, but also the local roads to tie in. The intersection should be placed out in an area where it's not in the drainage, so that we're not having to burden the cost of dealing with those culverts and whatnot that would go along with the roadway. And that we would also want that connectivity to include down to, and I don't know if it was Steve or who said it, down to 7,300 west, have some
yeah.
local roads or major roads
Out to the
connect.
trail line.
And into, what is it, the Olympia Main Street thing?
I don't remember this, Olympia Main, really this green should come all the way to this point.
Agreed.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Or yellow, it depends on
Right,
which
well,
one
we
of these
Almost
drawings
make
we're
that
doing.
and bring that down right through his project like he had, with the green,
yeah.
could go a couple different, I mean,
Yeah,
that's,
so this,
again,
But
that's down.
all of that has to connect both for
Correct.
regional and for local traffic.
this will be a large roundabout right here. So that'll be kind of an interesting one for us to see how that works.
K Park thing.
Yeah, the K Park, no, K Park's.
K Park's over by.
K Park's
Oh,
right here.
sorry, I
That's
forgot.
This is
We'll call it
The
This is
Olympia
the-
Park.
Yeah,
yeah,
What is
No,
it?
we'll call it that,
The
Olympia Park.
Olympia Park.
okay,
This will be K plus something, cause they gave us the property
Right.
across from it. But yeah, this will be a roundabout, there's some interesting topography things they're gonna have to do with that. But really, this will become your major intersection, right? People will turn here,
and should,
the traffic models all show a bunch of people going down 118th, it's just 118th doesn't get you the same place. WFRC stuff show everybody wanting to go to 134th, which I guess this one would be forcing you eventually to come through, blow out all the houses that are being built there right now. Go through. And I guess that would be the state doing that. So we've done a pretty good job as a city retaining the right of way on 126th. So I think our part of it will be good. I don't know if 118th is wide, but I haven't paid as much attention up there.
I think the 134th connectivity is important just for local. I can't imagine that there's a lot of people coming from the north that would come all the way down to 134th to go all the way across to connect to Mountain View or Bangor. That doesn't make any sense when they can just
Well,
do
there's a lot of-
126, 118.
Or 64 or
We had-
62.
Yeah, I mean, that does not seem
This- For
likely
the
to be.
locals, a lot of the local traffic right here this road connects into 134th on that, so a lot of local traffic. If you're up here, you probably jump on this one.
Right,
Depending on where you're going, or you're coming down 126, so they all seem to spread the traffic
Yeah,
fairly well.
I mean, the purple cross section there, or intersection, makes a lot of sense, cause traffic from the north, right? If they're heading east or south, right, southeast, they have the option to turn off 126, and any local traffic that's going to the northeast, right, they can take 7300. It helps separate the traffic flow for those major ones, and then we still have the local connectivity in between.
100%.
and we need to focus on that too.
Okay. So I actually think we have sufficient direction as staff now, we can go in there now. This has been one of the more interesting processes I've ever been involved in 23 years, because, like I said, we start out with one set, usually in an environmental model, they'll show you, here's our 6 things we're studying, okay. But in this, they show, here we're studying, the next time it's totally different, we're studying this, I don't know how they're studying any of it right at the moment.
Welcome to Utah, Nathan.
Because these ones all showed up this week. We received one yesterday while I was at, or I think maybe it was this. We received one of the things yesterday at Lagoon, so. Crazy.
Okay,
We good?
Yeah, that answers my question.
thank you, Bryce.
I'm good.
Appreciate all your work
I
on
guess
this.
the one follow-up is, then do we not need to discuss this item in the work, or in the general meeting?
I would say the general meeting would just make a motion. I don't know.
That's-
Resolution.
I think you could just do a motion to direct staff to advocate, given the direction in this meeting, something like that, some generic, just so that we have, it's on
We don't wanna
record.
sign the resolution though.
Yeah, you don't need a resolution on this, but,
At least not yet.
there may be one where we may wanna come back to it.
Yeah.
Um,
I think when they finally say
finalizing.
option A, B, or C, then we can resolve a certain solution.
Okay, on that, I look for a motion, we're gonna actually do our one, go to closed right now, since we've got time. That we don't have to stay after, so
Perfect.
I look for a motion, however you do that motion. I
A
don't-
motion to temporarily recess the city council meeting to convene in closed session for the purposes to discuss pending or reasonable imminent litigation and the purchase, exchange, or lease of real property as provided by Utah Code annotated section 52-4-205.
Motion by Steve, second by Teddy. Teddy?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Jared?
Yes.
I'll vote yes. We'll move into closed.
I bet you if I push myself, I could probably say that.
Might be able to do it from memory.
The